Okay, so welcome everyone. We're really excited to have you here. I wish that we had time to go through the weather report from each person, but I think we'd be here for 3 or 4 hours on that. We appreciate your coming out on a snowy night or a sleet night, whatever your night is, for this webinar about vouchers in North Carolina. Before we get started, I want to go over a couple of housekeeping items. Since we have about 70 participants signed up for this webinar, we have to keep everyone on mute. This will help with the quality of sound. If you have a question that you would like to ask during the presentation, you can write it in the question box and send it in, and we will do our best to answer it before our webinar is over. Tonight we're going to have 2 presenters with us, and in order to give everyone time for their part, we're going to hold the questions until the end, and we will get to as many as we can. At this time, I would like to thank Christine Bischoff, who is an attorney from the North Carolina Justice Center. She's working on one of the lawsuits challenging the constitutionality of the voucher program. And we also have with us Valerie Johnson, who is a parent with 2 children in Durham Public Schools, and she's a plaintiff in the lawsuit. You will hear from both of them later on in the presentation. So let's get started. For those of you who are not familiar with Public Schools First North Carolina, I'd just like to say a couple of words about that. We are an organization that is statewide and nonpartisan, and we're focused solely on public education issues. We seek to inform North Carolinians about critical issues that impact our schools and ways that we can support a quality public education system for each child. The topic for our webinar tonight is around the voucher initiative in North Carolina and the current status of the lawsuits. The voucher initiative was introduced as House Bill 944, the Opportunity Scholarship Act. After it passed, it was sent to the Senate, but it was not debated or voted on there. It was passed as a provision of the 2013-2015 budget. Here are the main features of the voucher program. We'll go into some detail about that in a few slides, but the main features are that there is $10 million allocated to start the program in school year 2014. This will provide about 2,400 vouchers to students who meet the income guidelines. The voucher can be for up to $4,200 per year. Online applications are being accepted beginning February 1, with awards starting to be made in March. The eligibility for the first year of the voucher program is different from the second and ensuing years. During the first year of the program, this coming school year, the income level cannot be above the amount required to qualify for free and reduced price lunches, and full-time and only students who have been full-time but not graduated from North Carolina Public Schools during the 2014 spring semester are eligible for the vouchers. Going forward from 2015 to 16 academic year, the categories of people who are eligible for the vouchers is expanded, and this is something that we also see in other states who've had more years of experience with vouchers. At the point of 2015, in addition to those kids who are full-time attending public school in the prior semester and have received scholarships in the previous year, you can also get a voucher if you are entering kindergarten or first grade, if you are in foster care, or you are adopted not more than a year prior to applying for the scholarship. In addition, the income eligibility criteria are also loosened in 2015, 16, and beyond. So instead of just being those who are at the level of free and reduced lunch, it can be not in excess of 33% of the 133% of the amount to qualify for free and reduced lunch. So you can see some examples there of the numbers of people who can be in a family and the income limits that would still qualify them to be a participant in the voucher program. The scholarship amount is up to $4,200. If the tuition in the private school that the parents and the student choose is less than $4,200, then they can get the amount that it is, up to $4,200. If you are between 100% and 133% of the amount to qualify for free and reduced lunch, you must pay 10% of the tuition and fees. So how does the program work? If a family receives a voucher, they get to choose an eligible private school. The list of private schools can be found at the website you see at the bottom of the screen of this slide, the North Carolina State Education Assistance Authority. Just as a side note, I have put all of the websites on a slide at the end of our presentation. So when we're doing the question and answer part of the presentation, you'll have some time to write some of them down if you're interested in going to check them out. The voucher check is sent to the private school, and then the parent or guardian visits the school to sign the check over to the school. And the administrators are the North Carolina State Education Assistance Authority. Here's some things to think about when we think about private schools. Private and religious schools do not have to provide transportation or meals, have certified teachers, be accredited by the State Board of Education or any national or state agency. They don't need to meet legal safeguards for special needs students. They don't have to use state tests to measure student progress or to demonstrate any increase in proficiency. They don't have to admit all students or be non-sectarian. So one thing I think that it's important to understand about our voucher initiative, that is in terms of standards, the private schools who accept vouchers do not have to administer state tests. So it will not be easy to understand how students are performing in the schools compared to traditional public schools. Let's take a look for a minute, a brief look at a couple of voucher experiences in other states. The oldest voucher programs in the country are in Milwaukee and Cleveland, and they have been extensively evaluated. The most recent evaluations, and they are consistent with prior years of evaluations, are that in Milwaukee, public school students outperform voucher students on 13 of 14 of the measures used, and in Cleveland, it's 10 out of 14. And I will be happy to share the citations with you if you would like those later. In spite of lackluster results, tax dollars have been flowing to voucher programs. Our voucher program is starting at $10 million. There was discussion of it being $40 million in the second year, and this is consistent with voucher programs across the country that have started small and grown large. And you can see examples of that on this slide, what states in Wisconsin, Florida, and Ohio were spending in 2002 on voucher programs. As you would expect, voucher programs in North Carolina and other places are controversial, and there are advocates both for and against them. Those who argue for vouchers say that these are some of the reasons that they are for vouchers. They say that rich parents have a choice of schools for their children, and so poor parents should have that same choice. That public schools have failed to educate at-risk students, and voucher schools will do a better job. Competition between private and public schools leads to better outcomes for all schools. Private schools are better at teaching values. Parents who send their children to private schools, in effect, pay twice to educate their children. And so those are some of the arguments that people use when they say that they are for a voucher program. On the other hand, there are people who argue against vouchers, and here are some of their arguments. Research shows that low-income students attending private schools under voucher programs do no better than such students attending public schools. In fact, some do worse in private schools. Private schools can discriminate in selecting students, while public schools must accept everyone. Private schools may hire teachers and administrators who are not certified and qualified. Private schools can limit their enrollments and class size. Public schools must accept all students and have a harder time reducing their class size and their enrollment. Private schools can expel students without due process. They do not have to follow special education law. They can hold closed meetings. And finally, vouchers take money from underfunded schools. There are also serious constitutional questions around voucher programs. And in that regard, 2 lawsuits have been filed in North Carolina challenging vouchers. One has been filed jointly by the North Carolina Justice Center and the North Carolina Association of Educators, and the other by the North Carolina Schools Boards Association. We're very fortunate tonight to have Christine Bischoff with us. She is an attorney who has worked on the lawsuit being filed by the North Carolina Justice Center. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Christine to talk about some of the arguments in terms of the constitutionality of our initiative. So Christine, welcome. Christine? Oops. I'm having trouble with Christine's sound. Hello, Christine. Christine? If you all can bear with us for a minute, we'll try to figure out what's happened. She says she's here. She's not sure why you can't hear me. Christine?
Hey, Paige, is Christine on the phone or using the mic and speakers?
She is using this phone. Emma?
Yes.
Do you have an idea about helping Christine?
I would tell her to switch to the mic and speakers and not the telephone.
Her mic and speakers are not good. I appreciate your patience, everybody. We're trying to get Christine. Emma?
Yes, well, I'm here.
Have you been able to get her? No.
Paige, let's move on to Valerie and we'll try calling Christine and figure out what's going on.
Okay. So, oh, a plane just took off. All right. So I'm going to go to Valerie. Are you with us, Valerie?
I am. Can you hear me?
Great. Yes, yes, we can hear you. So, while Carrie and Emma work with Christine to see if they can get her back and get her voice going, we're going to hear from Valerie Johnson, who is a plaintiff in the lawsuit that Christine is filing. And Valerie, could you just talk with us for a few minutes about why you thought it was important to join this lawsuit?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to talk about this lawsuit. I think it is very important for everyone in North Carolina, every taxpayer and every student, every parent, and everyone who cares about education in North Carolina. First, I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. I was a teacher in the Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools for 4 years. I then went to law school. And to do that work, I had to get my bachelor's degree in education. I obtained certification in teaching elementary education. I completed my student teaching. I passed a background check, all before I got a job. I did that because I have a long-standing commitment to the public schools. I myself am a product of the North Carolina public schools in more ways than one. Not only did I attend public schools in Vance County, where I'm from, but my parents are former teachers. My mother taught for more than 40 years in Vance County, and my father taught and was an administrator in Warren County. My children have also, I have two of them. One is 9, almost 10, and one is a senior at Jordan High School in Durham. Both of them have attended Durham Public Schools since kindergarten. I don't think I could be a stronger advocate for the public schools, and that's why I'm a plaintiff in this lawsuit. I believe in this lawsuit because I think it's important to have teachers who are dedicated to their craft, who care about their students, who care about the process of educating our children. And that is something that is lacking in this law that allows vouchers. I think that a teacher who takes the time to educate himself or herself and take continuing education, be watched and mentored, be evaluated continuously is important, and none of us standards are there. I, of course, witnessed this firsthand and became a tenured teacher in childhood. I also am very much concerned about diversity. I am a product of desegregation, and diversity continues to be extremely important to me and to my children. Just this week, my son came to me and told me that not only are they exposed to diversity with the range of students here who come from all over the world, not just all over the country, but they are doing a unit now on diversity and sharing their own cultural experiences. Diversity is not just something that is passive. In public schools, it should be an active process. And I think the schools are, because they're forced to take in students who are different, are used to using this as an educational tool. Diversity in this lawsuit is not mandated. Students do not have to be, in this law, do not have to be taken. There's no requirement that students who have physical or other challenges are going to be let into these private schools or be given vouchers. It is important to be around and to learn from different students and different teachers. I'm also very concerned about my tax dollars as a taxpayer. These are public funds, and as you will hear, those public funds are constitutionally protected and supposed to be used exclusively for public education. Our tax dollars are managed by public officials who have some accountability, and that accountability is lacking in this voucher program. Not only is it lacking in the testing and the lack of any kind of means to be able to see how students are performing, but it's lacking in the taxpayer dollars. How will we know that these funds are managed correctly? And when there is no accountability, that brings up questions of the public good, and it's very important, given that this is constitutional, raises constitutional questions, that our money be used effectively and efficiently. We can't vote these people out of office if they misuse taxpayer dollars. Effectively, $4,200 now being given to people who don't have to pass background checks on a per person basis. And now that I am a lawyer and I talk with people who are unfortunately victims of adults who haven't protected them, I know how important it is to make sure our children, my children, your children, are protected. I don't see that same accountability in this voucher program, and it worries me. So those are some of the reasons that I've joined this lawsuit. And thank you again for allowing me, Paige, to talk to you a little bit. I hope that you will be able to see some good that comes out of it.
Well, thank you, Valerie. We really appreciate your time and your interest in this topic. So the big question, is Christine here?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yay, Christine, yes. Okay, so we have to go through this laborious process, I'm sorry to say, to get back to your slides. But I'm going to do that now. And it'll take me a couple of minutes to get back.
Great, thank you.
To where you're beginning. I think we're here. Okay, so Christine, if you could help us understand the different constitutional issues involved in the voucher initiative.
Thank you so much, Paige, and I'm sorry we had those technical difficulties, but I also want to thank everyone who joined us this evening. And as Paige and Valerie mentioned, the North Carolina Justice Center and the North Carolina Association of Educators filed a lawsuit on December 11th challenging the voucher program. And in this lawsuit, we represent 25 plaintiffs who are taxpayers in North Carolina. And these taxpayers are from all over the state. So you just heard from Valerie, who's from Durham, but we have plaintiffs from Asheville, Guilford County, Charlotte, Johnston County, Carrboro, Fayetteville, and other communities across the state. So geographically, this is a very diverse group of plaintiffs, which I think sends a very strong message that taxpayers across the state are interested in this issue. This isn't just an issue in Raleigh. This is people across the state care deeply and feel strongly that this program should not stay. And our plaintiffs are also diverse in terms of who they are or their life experiences. So we have parents and grandparents, community leaders, ministers, teachers, principals, former superintendents. So again, a very diverse group of plaintiffs are in this lawsuit. And the group is also diverse in terms of race, age, and gender. So I just say that to point out again that it's not one certain group of people who care about this issue, and it's not, the feelings about vouchers are not strong in opposition in one area of the state. People across the state from all different backgrounds care deeply and feel that this program is wrong. So our plaintiffs are challenging, as Paige mentioned, the constitutionality of the statute, and we're bringing this as a facial challenge. So what that means is that we are arguing that on its face, this statute is unconstitutional. So we're saying that we don't have to wait until the voucher money starts to be distributed to private schools this fall, because the very language of the statute directly violates the Constitution in 5 distinct ways. And so now we'll talk about each of our 5 claims. So as you look at the slide, you see that the first one is about tax revenues must be used exclusively for a uniform system of free public schools. So the North Carolina Constitution says that all monies belonging to the state for purposes of public education shall be used exclusively for establishing and maintaining a uniform system of free public schools. So again, this word exclusively, when the drafters of our Constitution wrote this, they included that word, that this money had to be used exclusively to fund a uniform system of free public schools. So based on what Paige has told you about the voucher program, this is in direct conflict with what's happening. So basically with the vouchers, your tax dollars, my tax dollars, our tax dollars are going to be used to fund private schools, and they're going to be taking this money from funds that would have been used for public education. So that's our first claim, is that this money is not going to be used exclusively for free public schools, and therefore it's the direct opposite of what the Constitution requires. And our second claim is that tax revenues must be used for public purposes only. So again, I'm going to just tell you, to quote the North Carolina Constitution. So the North Carolina Constitution says, "The power of taxation shall be exercised in a just and equitable manner for public purposes only." And so what that means is that the state can only use tax dollars for public purposes, which makes sense. So again, based on what Paige has told you about the voucher program, we're essentially going to be giving public taxpayer dollars to private schools to educate certain kids who those schools decide to admit. So we are arguing, or our plaintiffs are claiming, that this is not a public purpose. And it's, how could it be a public purpose? Because you're taking from the public schools and you're putting that money in private schools. So that's our second claim in this lawsuit. And our third claim revolves around the Board of Education, the State Board of Education's constitutional duties. So what the Constitution says is that the State Board of Education shall supervise and administer the free public school system and the educational funds provided for its support. So again, the Constitution is very clear that the State Board of Education has to oversee all of the public school system and the money that would be used to educate kids, public money that would be used to educate kids. So as Paige and Valerie both pointed out, the State Board of Education is going to have nothing to do with these private schools that take vouchers. The State Board isn't going to make sure that they hire certified teachers. They're not going to make sure that they administer certain tests. They're not going to be making sure that they have background checks. The State Board has nothing to do with these private schools. Yet they're using public money to fund the private schools, and the Constitution explicitly says the State Board has that duty. So that's our third claim, that this directly conflicts with the North Carolina Constitution for these reasons. Can I have the next slide, please? And our fourth claim is that vouchers create a non-uniform system of schools for primary and secondary education. So again, the state constitution says the General Assembly shall provide by taxation and otherwise for a general and uniform system of free public schools. So what that means is that, again, the legislature's job is to use our tax dollars to provide for a uniform system of free public schools. But as Paige and Valerie have pointed out, these private schools that accept voucher money are going to be anything but uniform. So public schools, traditional public schools, have to have certified teachers. These private schools don't. Public schools have to take all kids who want to go there. These private schools can pick and choose who they want to take. Public schools do background checks on all employees. The private schools don't have to. And the list goes on and on. But that's that claim, that what the legislature has essentially done by funding this voucher program is create a non-uniform system of public money being spent on education. And our fifth claim is a discrimination claim. And so what the state constitution says is that no person shall be subjected to discrimination by the state because of race, color, religion, or national origin. And as Paige pointed out, that is exactly what these private schools are going to be able to do. So when they are taking voucher money, taking our tax dollars, they can admit any kids they want, and they can deny any kids admission. So they can discriminate. They can say we don't want black kids, or we don't want Hispanic kids, or we don't want white kids, or they could say we don't want Baptists, or we don't want Catholics, we don't want Hispanic, they can do whatever they want, and there's no provision in the voucher legislation that would prevent them from doing so. And so our argument is that that directly conflicts with what the North Carolina Constitution requires. And so those are our 5 constitutional claims. If we can have the next slide, please. So as Paige mentioned, the North Carolina School Boards Association also filed a lawsuit. And many of their claims are very similar to ours. So again, if we're looking at the slide, the first bullet we've mentioned is that vouchers violate the public purpose clause. So it's what I explained earlier, that we're using public taxpayer dollars to fund private schools. And the argument is that that's not a public purpose. And then the second bullet is basically saying that under the North Carolina Constitution, the state has an obligation to guard and maintain citizens' rights to education. So what this claim is saying is that by not having any standards, by not holding these private schools accountable in any way, that part of the Constitution is being violated because the state is not guarding and maintaining this right. And the other part of this claim is that many of you are probably familiar with the Leandro case, which guarantees all students in North Carolina a sound basic education. So this claim is saying that because we're using public money to educate these kids who are using vouchers, that there's no accountability that these kids are getting their Leandro sound basic education. And then the next bullet talks about, again, the claim I already described, that public money used for education is to be used exclusively for this uniform system of free public schools. So that's the same argument that we are making. And then the last bullet talks about the School Boards Association includes a claim that is basically that because only certain kids can use the vouchers and they're not available to everyone, it's illegal because it's not offering everyone this opportunity. And additionally, it's not only that only certain kids can use the vouchers, it's that schools can pick and choose who they want to take. So schools are also limiting who has this opportunity. So that's what that claim entails. Can I have the next slide, please? And so this is a list of the local school boards that have joined the North Carolina School Boards Association's lawsuit. And so there, so far, 40 local school boards have passed resolutions to join the lawsuit, and other school boards across the state are considering resolutions in opposition to vouchers or are considering joining the lawsuit. So there's a lot of activity around this particular piece right now. And I think just if you look at this list and the diversity of these school districts, both geographic diversity, income diversity, the racial and ethnic makeup of these school districts, I think what this says is that, again, this is such a diverse group of school districts that people across the state are very concerned about this issue and feel very strongly that our state should not have a voucher program. So I'll hand it back to you, Paige.
Great. Thank you so much, Christine. Really appreciate all of your insight on this issue. We do have right now one question that is directly related to what you've just been talking about. And so I thought maybe we could ask you that one while we've got it right here in front of us. The question is, do you know yet what arguments the defendants are going to use in support of a voucher program? Or is that state secret?
That's a very
not
good
part
question.
of the question. That's my editorializing. The question is just, do you know yet what arguments the defendants are going to use in support of a voucher program?
Okay, very good question. And so also a very timely question. So when we filed our lawsuit, the state filed a motion to dismiss, and the first round of briefs are due this Thursday, the 29th, and so we'll have a much better idea of their arguments once we see their briefs. Their motion to dismiss was very general and vague, but when we read their brief, which again will be filed this Thursday, we'll have a much better idea of the arguments they plan to make.
Okay. So at this point, I'm going to go to the next slide and talk about some things that people can do, and then we will come to the part of the presentation where we can have questions and answers. And I would love for you all to, we will ask you, please, also, you can use the raise your hand function if you would like to ask a question, and we can unmute you, and then you can ask your question. So be thinking about that as we go through a few of these other slides. So here's some things that you can think about doing if you have concerns either way about vouchers. You can let your elected state officials know where you stand on it. Attend your county commissioner and school board meetings and speak during the open comment periods. Write letters to your editor. One great thing to do is to get some friends together to meet and learn more about issues. We find that a lot of people do not have a lot of information about these issues, and it really helps when you go through some of the details about it. You can find lots of information about this program on our website and on the Justice Center website, and you will see those websites coming up pretty soon. You may be aware of wearing red for public ed on Wednesdays, showing some support for teachers and students and parents in our public education system. Our teachers, as I'm sure some of you know, are feeling pretty much beat up these days, and so we're encouraging people to ask teachers to come to PTA meetings to see about ways that you can support them in their daily work in the schools. Go to meetings that teachers are organizing. Teachers are learning that they need to be working closely with parents and parents closely with teachers on these issues. If you feel moved to do so, there are a couple of good petitions that you can sign right now. There is one called Aim Higher NC, which is an effort to say to our leadership in Raleigh that we really need to have a plan for getting our teachers back to the national average. They were there only 10 years ago, and we, instead of having a little raise here or there, we need to be thinking about a big plan, putting it in place. How are we going to really get our teachers back to where they deserve to be? There's a second petition called organize2020.com take action. You can go there and sign up on that one. That one is about supporting lower class size, higher per pupil spending, and restoring some of our teaching assistants. So those are some ideas you can think about in terms of things that you can do in your communities. Of course, we would love for you to join with us at publicschoolsfirstnc.org. It's free, and you'll get our news alerts and information. You can like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. You see all of the addresses there. And if you want information about our work, or you want to write to us about questions that occur to you after this presentation is over or at any other time, you can see on your screen that you can write to info@publicschoolsfirstnc.org or call 919-576-0655 and leave us a message. So here are all of the websites of the places that we mentioned during this presentation, and you can take those down while we look for some questions. Christine, I am sorry that I didn't put your personal website there. I mean, your personal email there. Could you spell that out for people in case they might want to have it?
Of course. And I would also just like to make the same offer that Paige just made. If you are having a community event anywhere in the state and you want someone to come speak on the event, please let me know, because someone at the Justice Center hopefully could come, or even better, we may be able to connect you to plaintiffs who live in your community, and they can speak on the issues like Valerie did, which I think offers a lot of insight. So again, anything we can do to help facilitate discussion on this issue, we would love to help. So my email is Christine at at ncjustice.org, and my phone number is 919-856-3195.
So I see one more question here. I've heard, excuse me, I've heard folks say that this will save money. How can that be true or false? Well, some people say that it will save money because you're only spending $4,200 a child to give them a voucher to go to a private school. However, everybody needs to be sure and clear that they understand that for the district must turn in to the state the number of students who have accepted vouchers and left the system, and then the district will no longer receive the per pupil funding from the state for those students. So there will be a loss of funds for the district from the state for those students. The other thing that people say is that, you know, you can get a better bargain at a private school, but I think that we all need to remember from the things that we've heard here tonight from Christine, and hopefully you heard them from me, that private schools do not have to accept all children. They do not have to serve high needs children. They do not even have to have an ADA compliant playground. They do not have to serve lunches and transportation. So you may be able to get some kind of an education at a private school for $4,200, but there are a lot of services that those schools are not obliged to provide to their students. Okay, let me see. Do we have any other questions? Carrie, are you seeing any?
There was one follow-up question from Larry Vick. He said, what do you anticipate they're going to say? I think he's referring to, back to the lawsuit.
Oh, yeah. So, Christine, do you have any speculation?
Well, one thing that they'll likely say is, sure. One thing that they'll likely say is that that our lawsuit is premature. So they'll say that because, as I mentioned earlier when I was describing it, we're bringing this as a facial challenge. So we think that the statute as written is unconstitutional, and we don't need to wait till it's implemented to then go back in and tell the court, well, they've just implemented an unconstitutional program. So one thing that they'll likely argue is they'll say it's too early to bring this lawsuit. How can you know all these claims are valid until we've actually implemented it? So that's one argument they'll likely make.
I see a question here from Paula, I think. What source can we refer to that would tell us what the differences are between accountability for charters versus public schools? Okay, this is a great question. So first of all, let's all be clear that a charter school and a private school are two different animals. Charter schools are public schools. They do receive public funds. They do have to admit students, and they do have to take the same state tests that public school students take. Oh, a difference between accountability for charters versus public schools. I would say the main difference in accountability for charters versus public schools, they do take the same test, so you can get the test results. I think there is far less accountability in charter schools in terms of stewardship of the dollars. For example, here in Durham, we had charter schools who for the first time were invited by our county commissioners to come and just talk about the local money that we're sending to charter schools. What are they actually doing with the local dollars? That had never happened before, and it doesn't have to happen by law. Another difference between accountability for charters and public schools is that charter schools do not have to provide transportation or lunches either. Some of them do and some of them don't. I think that you can find a lot of information about, I mean, I don't mean to toot our own horn, but you can find a lot of information about charter schools and accountability issues at publicschoolsfirst.org, and you can also find stuff at thejusticecenter.org as well. I hope that answered your question. I'm not sure if I did or not, Paul. If I didn't, send some more in and I'll see if I can clarify it for you.
Paige, there are a few more questions.
Okay. Do you want to read them out?
Sure.
Can you? Okay.
Natalie asks, what was the postcard shown on a previous slide?
That postcard, and I did use it with permission of the name of the person to whom it was sent. His name was actually on the front of it. But just to be clear about that, those are large sort of campaign style postcards that have been mailed out to many people that we know in our community. I don't know if it's happened in your communities or not, but essentially it is a postcard that is urging people to explore the option of getting a voucher and you know, attending a private school. To find out if you're qualified for it, you know, go to this resource, you can check it out, that kind of thing. So I just used it as an example of you know, pretty aggressive marketing of the charter issues.
There's another good question. It asks from Tara, what is our communication strategy? What are our main talking points that that we want them to communicate?
Carrie, would you like to talk about that?
Well,
Carrie?
one of the things we're
Yeah.
trying to communicate is that public schools are the best choice. So we're trying to lead with a positive message about the continued value of public schools for families. Of course, wherever possible, we try to provide facts about where voucher programs have been tried and why they don't tend to work. Just the sort of thing that we've communicated tonight, that Paige has communicated in her slides. Anything that Christine you would like to add to that? From the point of view of the Justice Center, what communication strategy is most helpful in supporting your efforts with the lawsuit?
Well, I think you know, the points that you mentioned, Carrie. I think some other points that seem to resonate are, you know, that it's public dollars, it's your taxpayer dollars being used to allow schools to discriminate against kids. I mean, again, there's no anti-discrimination requirement in this statute, and we've all heard anecdotally stories of private schools that are doing just that, keeping kids out because the kid is gay or, you know, for other reasons. So I think that's an important talking point. And then I think, you know, to expand on what Carrie said, is that, you know, public schools are the better option in this. We're 48th in the nation in per pupil spending, and so taking more money out of the public system to send children to these unaccountable private schools that we have, as Paige mentioned, we have no clue if they're actually educating kids because they don't have to give any data. So taking this money out of this system that's already drained and sending it off to these private schools that may or may not be actually educating kids, that it's just so self-defeating. And I think that point seems to resonate with people.
I also think that when I've been talking around the state, I try to remind people and that we have been going in a good direction in North Carolina in terms of public education for many years. We are not perfect, and we do not meet the needs of every single child every single day, but we do a very good job, and we have been improving steadily over many years, and you can see this in our graduation rate, you can see it in our lowest dropout rates ever, you can see it in our national assessment of educational progress. Those are national test scores, nationally normed test scores, and our students are at or above average in 4th and 8th grade in reading and math. So public schools have been providing a good education for a lot of children across the state. We have 1.5 million children to educate, and we need to be thinking in terms of how we recruit, retain, and professionally develop our teachers in a career. And we need to be thinking about how we resource these schools so that they can actually respond to the needs of a vastly varied population of children. So hopefully those are some ideas that'll make some sense to people in your communities.
We have several more questions. One of them is a quick factual question. What happens if students go to private schools and leave mid-year to return to public schools?
As far as we know, the money stays and the child comes back to the public school with none of the money. There was some talk at some point, if a child transferred from a private school to a private school, there would be a prorated amount sent to the second private school. But I believe that the legislation is silent on what happens if a child returns to the public schools. I don't think the money comes back.
And the only added detail that I'm aware of is that's our understanding as well, that the private school gets to keep the money. But I believe this money is going to be distributed by the state at the beginning of each semester. So it seems that the private school will get $2,100 for the fall, $2,100 for the spring. So we would hope that if the child leaves, you know, before the second semester starts, that the money wouldn't go to the private for the spring semester. But I've not heard anyone say that that money will then go back to the public school.
We have a question about the separation of church and state and whether that's an issue here, seeing as so many of our private schools in North Carolina are faith-based. Christine, do you want to speak to why that's not a more central aspect of your lawsuit?
Sure. So let's see. So, you know, we considered this claim, and the issue there is the way that the legislature set this program up. So what they did is they said, well, the money is going to go from the state to the school, but the school can't use the money until the parent goes in and endorses the check. So the check is worthless until the parent endorses it. And what the U.S. Supreme Court has said on that issue is that because the check is worthless until the parent endorses it, it's the parent's choice that this money is going to the private school. And so it's not violating church and state. That the U.S. Supreme Court said that in a case called Zellman in 2002. So what our legislature did was just copy exactly what the Supreme Court said on that issue was okay in Zellman. So that's the thinking from a legal perspective. But in terms of policy points, Paige or Carrie may want to talk on that.
Well, the only thing I would add is that in North Carolina, we already know that over 2/3 of the private schools that will be in the qualifying list for vouchers are religious schools, or they self-identify as religious schools. So there will be, I would assume the majority of children will be attending religious schools. We're coming up on not much more time, and I want to make sure we try to get to a couple of people who haven't been able to ask questions yet.
There's a comment from Connie. Do you see that page?
Can a kindergarten student, is that the one you're talking about?
No, it's the last one. As a classroom teacher, I work very hard to meet the needs of all students. However, the money given out is affecting my household drastically. She says
Yes.
Accountability is so important.
Yes. I see a couple of other questions. I'd like to try to get to them. Connie, you had one about, can a kindergarten student attend a private school with a voucher program? What if a parent income changes in the cycle of the school year? Would they have to pay more? I'm not aware that kindergarten students can use this voucher program. If you are coming out of a kindergarten program into pre-K in North Carolina in 2015, I think you can qualify for a voucher in the public system for the kindergarten program. So I'm sorry, I misspoke then. Yes, At 2015, a kindergarten child can use the voucher. If the income of the parent changes, I don't know, Christine, do you know? I don't think there's any requirement that during that year they would be paying more. And I don't actually know what they've done about deciding what happens if their income changes from year to year.
No, I'm not aware either. No,
okay.
I'm not aware. And the problem here is that, you know, the statute only includes so many provisions. So the law is broad on certain things, and then but the State Education Assistance Authority, which is overseeing this voucher program, they haven't put out a lot of information like the answer to that question. So I haven't heard the answer to that question, and there are several others similar detail-oriented questions that the State Education Assistance Authority has been silent on, and they're the ones who will make that decision. So I don't think anyone would know the answer to that question.
There's a question here from Paula. Are there still organizations that are working to subsidize the tuition costs for private school beyond $4,200? I don't know about those organizations. I don't know if any of our organizers or presenters are aware. I'm sure there are organizations that help with that, and I'm sure there are private schools that have their own scholarships that they provide to students. But I'm not, I really can't speak to that specifically. Can anybody? Okay. Do we have, let's see, one comment here. So the voucher system is basically to assist low-income students, correct? It is beginning that way. If your income is in the middle, the program doesn't help you. Not at this time. So this, because it does have income requirements. However, I think everyone should understand that in both Cleveland and Milwaukee, the oldest programs, those income requirements have been loosened year after year after year. And in fact, the governor in Wisconsin last year tried to get a bill through that said there would be no income requirements for people to use vouchers. He did not succeed in that, but I'm just mentioning where the direction of the conversation is going. And so then Danielle says, so this means money is going to be taken from public schools. Yes, that is what it means. So I think we've come to the end of our time, and I don't know what happens if I don't get out of here fast, they like cut us off or something. I hope that's not true. I really want to thank all of our presenters. Valerie, thank you so much for being a part of this and being a plaintiff in the lawsuit. Christine, thanks for all your insight and wisdom. Carrie, thanks for helping me with juggling the logistics. And Emma, our little tech wizard, we could not have done this without you, so I deeply appreciate that. I hope if you have any questions, please write info@publicschoolsfirstnc.org, and we will do our best to answer them. So with that, I'll say good night to everyone. Stay warm, stay safe, stay off the roads. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.